Isaiah Brooks started every morning before the city remembered its own name. At 5:12 a.m., in a two-bedroom apartment above a closed laundromat on the east side of Charlotte, he stood barefoot in the kitchen, packing two small lunches under the yellow hum of a tired ceiling light. Turkey sandwich for Caleb. Peanut butter and banana for Maya. Apple slices in plastic bags. A folded napkin with a little drawing on it because Maya liked surprises, and Caleb pretended he did not, even though Isaiah had found every one of those napkins tucked carefully inside his desk drawer. He was 38, a night shift maintenance supervisor at a public school by contract and a weekend mechanic whenever someone's old truck needed mercy more than money. His hands were broad, dark, and permanently marked by work. Grease stayed in the lines of his palms no matter how hard he scrubbed. His boots leaned by the door, cracked at the toe. His coffee was black, cheap, and already going cold. But when Caleb wandered in with his backpack half-zipped and Maya came behind him dragging one pink sneaker by the laces, Isaiah turned like the whole day had just become worth it. "Morning, team," he said softly. Maya held up the shoe. It got tired. Isaiah knelt without a sigh, without rushing her, tying the laces with the care of a man handling something sacred. Caleb watched from the counter, old enough to notice the bills under the fruit bowl and young enough to still believe his father could fix anything. "You working tonight too?" Caleb asked. Isaiah smiled, but it was the kind of smile that carried weight. "After dinner. Just a few hours." He did not tell them the rent had gone up again. He did not tell them the school had cut overtime. He did not tell them that the only reason they were going to a restaurant that evening was because Maya had brought home a certificate for reading 100 books, and Caleb had given up his birthday pizza money so his little sister could eat somewhere with cloth napkins. A father swallowed those things quietly. Love did not always arrive wrapped in abundance. Sometimes it came in coupons, tired feet, and a man pretending not to count dollars before dessert. By 6 that evening, rain glazed the windshield of Isaiah's old blue Ford as he pulled up outside Bellamy House, a polished restaurant with brass doors, valet umbrellas, and windows that made ordinary people see their reflection before they saw inside. Isaiah sat there a moment, engine ticking, his children in the back seat staring at the chandeliers beyond the glass. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous. Just familiar. The kind of wrong that came when a man knew a room had already decided what he was worth before he opened the door. "Daddy," Maya whispered, "are we allowed to go in there?" Isaiah turned in his seat. His jacket was clean but old. His collar was pressed. One cuff had been mended by hand. "Baby, we're allowed anywhere we know how to respect people." Caleb looked at him, searching his face for fear. He found none. Only steadiness. Inside, the restaurant smelled of warm bread, lemon butter, expensive perfume, and quiet judgment. Conversations lowered when Isaiah approached the host's stand with Caleb on one side and Maya holding 2 fingers of his hand on the other. The hostess looked at his boots first. Then his children. Then the reservation book. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, though there were open tables near the back. "No, ma'am," Isaiah said. "Just 3 for dinner, if you have room." His voice was low, polite, impossible to embarrass. Across the restaurant, behind a half-wall of frosted glass, Vivian Sterling sat at a private table with her daughter Emma. Vivian was elegant in a cream blazer, her pale hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, her diamond watch catching the candlelight every time her phone vibrated beside her plate. She was the kind of woman people recognized before they knew why. CEO. Mother. Donor. Headline. A woman who had learned to be polished because polished things did not crack in public. Emma sat across from her in a navy dress, small shoulders folded inward, eyes on an untouched plate of pasta. Vivian had booked the finest table in the city to celebrate her daughter's 12th birthday, then spent the first 20 minutes answering messages from the board. She told herself it was necessary. She had been telling herself that for years. Then Isaiah passed their table. Not close enough to interrupt. Just close enough for Vivian to notice the way he guided Maya around a server without letting the child feel in the way. The way he pulled out Caleb's chair first, then Maya's, then took the seat facing the room like instinct. Like protection. Vivian glanced once, then looked back at her phone. But Emma kept watching. At the back table, Isaiah opened the menu and saw the prices. His face did not change. Caleb saw them too. The boy quietly closed his menu. "I'm not that hungry," he said. Isaiah looked at his son for 1 second longer than usual. Long enough to understand the sacrifice. Long enough to hate that the boy had learned it so early. "You earned dinner," Isaiah said. "Both of you." When the bread basket came, Maya reached for the biggest roll, then stopped, looking at Caleb. Isaiah broke it into 3 uneven pieces. The largest went to Maya. The next to Caleb. The smallest stayed near his own plate. "Daddy," Maya said, frowning, "yours is tiny." Isaiah winked. "A father eats last. That doesn't mean he gets less. It means he made sure love got served first." Emma heard it. So did Vivian. The words drifted across the polished room and landed somewhere neither mother nor daughter expected. Vivian's hand paused above her salad. Her fork hovered there, silver and perfect, as if the air had thickened around it. She did not know why that sentence made her throat tighten. Maybe because she had spent years giving Emma everything except the one thing the child kept waiting for. Attention without interruption. Love without a schedule. Then Maya's water glass tipped. It happened fast. A small elbow. A sharp gasp. Clear water spreading across white linen and dripping toward the floor. The nearest couple turned with visible irritation. A waiter stiffened. The manager started over with the expression of a man protecting the dignity of the room from the inconvenience of children. Maya's face crumpled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Isaiah was already on one knee, napkin in hand. No anger. No shame. No performance. "Look at me, baby," he said gently. Maya lifted wet eyes. "We clean what we spill. But we never let shame teach us who we are." The restaurant went quiet in that particular way wealthy rooms do when kindness interrupts their rules. Before we go deeper into what he discovered that day, tell us where you're watching from and do not forget to subscribe, because what happened next changed the way everyone looked at him. Vivian's fork slipped from her fingers. It hit the marble floor with a bright, delicate sound that cut through the silence. Every face turned toward her. But Vivian Sterling did not bend to pick it up. She was staring at Isaiah Brooks as if she had just watched a stranger do something she had forgotten was possible. Across from her, Emma slowly pushed back her chair. No one noticed the small folded napkin near Maya's plate until Emma reached the table and saw the drawing Isaiah had made that morning. A little bird. A crooked sun. And one name written in the corner that made Vivian's breath catch before she understood why. Emma did not pick up the napkin at first. She only stared at it, her fingers hovering above the little bird as if touching it might make the moment disappear. The drawing was simple, almost childish, made with a black pen that had started to fade halfway through the sun. But it was not the picture that made Vivian Sterling go still. It was the name in the corner, written carefully in small block letters, Emma. Not Sterling. Not Miss Emma. Just Emma, the way only a child or a kind man would write it when making something feel personal. Vivian stood beside her table with the fallen fork still on the floor near her heel, forgotten. Around her, the restaurant waited for her to become the kind of woman they expected her to be. The powerful woman. The polished woman. The one who corrected discomfort with money and silence. But for the first time that evening, Vivian did not know what role to play. At Isaiah's table, Maya pressed both hands over her mouth, ashamed of the water still dripping from the edge of the linen. Caleb had already reached for more napkins, moving quickly, trying to help before anyone could blame his father. Isaiah noticed everything. The manager's tight expression. The couple whispering near the window. Emma standing there with a softness in her eyes she had not worn at her own birthday table. Vivian watching him as if he had stepped out of a memory she could not place. He did not raise his voice. He did not apologize for existing in a room that had made room for everybody except people like him. He only gathered the wet napkins, folded them into his palm, and said to Maya, "You are all right. It is only water." The manager arrived with 2 servers behind him, his smile stiff enough to cut bread. "Sir, we can have this cleaned. Perhaps it would be more comfortable if your family moved to the small room near the service hall." Caleb's shoulders lowered. He understood the sentence beneath the sentence. Isaiah did too. A smaller room. A quieter room. A place where their laughter would not touch the expensive air. He stood slowly, not towering, not threatening, just steady. "We are fine here," he said. "My daughter made a mistake. We are handling it." The manager glanced toward Vivian, perhaps expecting approval, perhaps hoping the billionaire at the private table would rescue the restaurant from an awkward moment. Vivian said nothing. That silence bothered her more than the spill. She could command a boardroom with 12 men in gray suits. She could close a $400 million acquisition before lunch. But watching this father protect his children without shaming anyone, not even the people shaming him, made her feel strangely unqualified. Emma finally lifted the napkin. "Did you draw this?" she asked Maya. Maya shook her head and pointed to Isaiah. "Daddy draws one every lunch. So we know he thought about us before the day started." Emma turned the napkin over, careful with it. "My mother writes my schedule on cards," she said quietly. No bitterness. Just truth. Vivian heard it from 6 feet away, and something inside her folded. Isaiah looked at Emma, then at Vivian, asking permission without speaking. Vivian gave the smallest nod. He crouched enough to meet Emma at eye level, still leaving space so she would not feel crowded. "Schedules can be love too," he said gently. "Some people just forget to leave room in them." Emma looked back at her mother. The words did not accuse Vivian. That was why they hurt. They simply opened a door and let her see the room she had been living in. The couple by the window whispered again, louder this time, something about standards. Isaiah heard it. Caleb heard it. Even Maya, who was still wiping the table with both hands, heard enough to stop moving. Isaiah placed one hand lightly on Caleb's shoulder and the other near Maya's chair. "Children," he said, calm as rain against glass, "remember this. A person's manners are not measured by the price of their dinner." Vivian's eyes lowered to the fork on the floor. She bent to pick it up herself before any server could rush in. The movement was small, but the room noticed. A woman like Vivian Sterling did not usually bend in public. Not for silverware. Not for discomfort. Not for anyone. When she rose, the fork rested in her hand like evidence. The manager stepped closer. "Miss Sterling, I apologize for the interruption." Vivian looked past him at Isaiah's children. Maya was still trembling a little. Caleb was trying not to look embarrassed. Emma stood beside them as if she had found the only warm place in the restaurant. Vivian opened her mouth, but no polished sentence came out. Then Emma touched the corner of the napkin and whispered, "Mom, he put my name on it before he knew me." Isaiah heard that and looked down at the drawing for the first time since Emma had picked it up. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. He had drawn that bird for Maya. He knew he had. But there it was, unmistakable in the corner, a name he did not remember writing, and Vivian Sterling saw the confusion pass across his face before he could hide it. Isaiah kept his eyes on the napkin for only a second, but it was long enough for Vivian to see the first crack in his calm. Not fear. Not guilt. Something quieter. Recognition without explanation. He reached out slowly, not to take the napkin from Emma, but to steady the edge before the damp corner tore. "May I see that, sweetheart?" he asked. Emma looked at her mother first. Vivian nodded, though she was no longer sure what she was allowing. Isaiah held the napkin between two fingers, studying the crooked bird, the small sun, the name tucked in the corner. His thumb brushed the ink. The line was familiar. His own hand, yes. But the name did not belong to his morning. At home, under that tired kitchen light, he had drawn a bird for Maya because she had been afraid of her spelling test. He remembered writing her name. He remembered Caleb teasing him for making the beak too big. He remembered slipping the napkin into the wrong lunchbox once before, but that had been years ago, back when his wife was still alive and mornings felt less like a race against everything. The thought passed through him, then disappeared behind his discipline. This was not the place to unravel. Not with his children watching. Not with a room full of strangers waiting for weakness. "Looks like my pen had plans I did not know about," he said softly, giving Emma a small smile. It was enough to ease the child, but not enough to fool Vivian. She had spent her life reading men who lied in boardrooms, investors who smiled with knives behind their teeth, executives who hid panic under expensive cuff links. Isaiah was not lying. He was protecting the moment until he understood it. That difference unsettled her. The manager cleared his throat. "Sir, if we could just relocate your party, we would be happy to offer something complimentary for the inconvenience." Isaiah folded the napkin carefully and placed it on the dry part of the table. "There is no inconvenience that needs paying for," he said. "My children are eating here. Quietly. Respectfully. Same as everyone else." His voice stayed even, but something in it made Caleb sit a little straighter. Maya stopped trembling. Emma watched him as if she were learning a language her house had never spoken. Vivian should have stepped in then. A woman with her name could move people with one sentence. But the strange name on the napkin had caught her somewhere between curiosity and shame. Why Emma? Why today? Why this man, this father with worn boots and steady hands, sitting under a chandelier he clearly could not afford, speaking with more grace than anyone in the private dining room? Then she noticed the toolbox. It sat beneath Isaiah's chair, half hidden beside his old jacket. Small, metal, dented at the corners, the kind a working man carried because things broke and nobody else came fast enough. A strip of blue tape ran across the handle. On it, written in black marker, was one word, Brooks. The sight should have meant nothing. But Vivian's fingers tightened around the fork. Brooks. The name touched a locked drawer in her memory. Not opened. Not yet. Just touched. Emma stepped closer to Isaiah's table, still holding the folded napkin. "Mr. Brooks," she asked, polite and careful, "do you draw one every day because your kids might miss you?" Isaiah looked at his children before answering. Caleb looked down at his plate. Maya leaned against his sleeve. "I draw them because I am not always there when they open their lunch," he said. "But I want them to know I showed up before they did." The sentence landed softly, but it moved through Vivian like weather. She thought of Emma's lunch account, paid automatically. Her school pickup, assigned automatically. Her birthday reservation, booked by an assistant. Everything provided. Almost nothing touched by her own hand. Emma turned to Vivian, not accusing, not angry, just small. "Did you ever write me notes?" The restaurant seemed to lose sound. Vivian looked at her daughter, then at the phone still glowing on the white tablecloth behind her. 3 missed calls. 7 messages. A life demanding her attention while her child stood 6 feet away asking for evidence of love. "No," Vivian said, and the honesty scraped her voice. "I should have." Isaiah lowered his eyes, giving them privacy in the only way he could. That was when Maya reached for the napkin and whispered to Emma, "You can keep it if you want. Maybe it found you." Emma smiled for the first time that night. A real smile. Small. Unpracticed. Vivian saw it and forgot to breathe. The manager, impatient now, signaled to a busser, but before anyone moved, the lights above the private dining area flickered once. Then again. A soft buzz ran through the chandelier. Isaiah looked up immediately. His gaze changed. Not dramatic. Practical. Trained by years of noticing what others ignored. That ballast is failing, he murmured before he could stop himself. Vivian heard him. So did the manager. Excuse me, the manager said, almost offended. Isaiah rose slowly, eyes still on the light. You have children under that fixture, he said. You may want to move them back a few feet. Vivian followed his gaze, and for the first time that evening, she did not see a man who did not belong. She saw a father who had noticed danger before anyone paid to manage the room had even looked up. For one breath, nobody moved. The chandelier above the private dining area gave another faint buzz, a tiny electric complaint almost swallowed by the piano music near the bar. Most of the guests barely noticed. They saw crystal, gold trim, soft light, and a room designed to make them feel protected from ordinary problems. Isaiah saw something else. A flicker pattern. A darkening edge near the fixture plate. A faint scent of heat under the lemon butter and expensive perfume. Years of working in school hallways had taught him that buildings whispered before they failed. Pipes tapped. Wires hummed. Lights warned the people willing to listen. He stepped closer to his own children first, not toward the chandelier. That mattered. Vivian saw it. He put one hand near Maya's shoulder and angled Caleb back from the aisle before saying anything else. Both of you, stand by the wall for me. Caleb obeyed quickly. Maya looked frightened again, but Isaiah's voice stayed soft. You are not in trouble. Just helping me make space. Emma did not wait for Vivian. She moved with them, still holding the folded napkin like it had become a small permission slip into another kind of family. The manager forced a thin smile. Sir, this is a commercial building. Our systems are inspected regularly. Isaiah nodded once. I am glad to hear that. He looked up again. Still, that light is running hot. A man at the window gave a quiet laugh. Now he is an electrician too. The word slid across the room, polished and ugly. Caleb's jaw tightened. Isaiah noticed, because fathers noticed when sons were about to inherit their anger. He lowered his hand to the boy's shoulder and gave one gentle squeeze. Not here. Not like this. I do maintenance, Isaiah said simply. Schools, mostly. Old buildings. Children underneath things adults forgot to check. The sentence did not defend him. It explained his attention. That made it harder to dismiss. Vivian's gaze moved from the chandelier to Isaiah's toolbox beneath the chair. Dented metal. Blue tape. Brooks written in black marker. She had seen monogrammed luggage carried by men who could not solve a problem without 3 assistants. This box looked tired, but honest. It looked like it had shown up in rain, heat, basements, parking lots, and places where no one clapped when the lights came back on. Move the table, Vivian said quietly. The manager blinked. Miss Sterling, I assure you there is no need for concern. She turned her head toward him, elegant and cold enough to make the nearby conversation stop. Then there should be no harm in moving the table. 2 servers hurried forward. Chairs scraped softly against the marble. Guests lifted glasses and leaned back with irritated curiosity. Isaiah did not touch anything without permission. He stayed with the children until the space cleared, his body calm, his eyes alert. That restraint reached Vivian in a way panic would not have. He was not trying to impress her. He was trying to keep children from standing under a problem. The difference was impossible to ignore. When the table was moved, the manager looked at Isaiah with professional impatience. Satisfied? Isaiah did not answer immediately. He listened. The light flickered once more, then steadied. "May I borrow a chair?" he asked. "Absolutely not," the manager said. "We cannot have guests climbing on furniture." "Then call your building engineer. He has left for the evening. Then turn off that section from the panel until he returns." The manager's lips pressed together. That would affect the dining room experience. For the first time, Vivian looked embarrassed on behalf of someone else. The dining room experience. As if light mattered more than the people beneath it. Isaiah looked down at Maya, who was gripping Caleb's sleeve, then back at the manager. "Sir, comfort is not the same as safety." The sentence was quiet. It did not accuse. It corrected. Emma stared at him. Vivian saw her daughter absorb the words the way thirsty soil takes rain. A server shifted nervously near the wall. "There is a panel by the service hallway," she whispered, almost too low to hear. The manager shot her a warning look. Isaiah heard her. So did Vivian. "Show him," Vivian said. Her voice was not loud, but every person in the restaurant understood that it carried ownership of the moment. Isaiah turned toward her. "Only if you want me to, ma'am." That one word, ma'am, should have sounded distant. Instead, it sounded like respect without surrender. Vivian gave a small nod. "I do." Isaiah picked up his old toolbox. As he passed Vivian, the scent of rain clung to his jacket, clean and cold from outside. Emma watched him go toward the service hallway, then looked at her mother. "Mom," she whispered, "why did everyone act like he was wrong before they checked?" Vivian had no answer ready. Across the room, Isaiah stopped at the panel door. The blue tape on his toolbox caught the light again. Brooks. Vivian stared at the name, and this time the drawer in her memory did not just rattle. It opened a little. Isaiah opened the panel door with the kind of care that made even the skeptical guests fall quiet. He did not rush. He did not perform. He set his toolbox on the floor, wiped his hands once on the old rag tucked in his back pocket, and studied the breaker labels beneath the dim service light. The hallway behind the dining room smelled different from the restaurant. Less lemon butter. Less polished wood. More bleach, cardboard, old dust, and the honest heat of machines doing work nobody noticed. Isaiah understood that world. He had spent most of his adult life in places like this, behind the pretty parts of buildings, where the truth lived in loose screws, burned wires, and equipment people only cared about when it stopped obeying. Vivian stood a few steps behind him with Emma beside her, though she had not meant to follow. She told herself she was making sure he did not damage anything. That sounded reasonable. Safe. Executive. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. She wanted to see what kind of man stayed calm after being looked down on, laughed at, and nearly moved out of sight, then still chose to help. Isaiah pointed to a breaker near the top row. "That section," he said to the nervous server. "Do you know if it feeds the chandelier only, or the wall sconces too?" The server shook her head. "I just know the engineer told us not to touch it." Isaiah nodded. "That is usually good advice." The manager folded his arms. "Then perhaps we should wait for a professional." Isaiah looked at him, not insulted. "You should. But you also should not leave children under a hot fixture while you wait." He did not say it sharply. He did not have to. The words stood on their own. Vivian watched his profile in the side light. The crease between his brows. The tiredness around his eyes. The restraint in his mouth. There was nothing soft about his life, she could tell, but there was something deeply gentle in the way he moved through pressure. He tested the panel with a small voltage pen from his toolbox, then opened a narrow flashlight between his teeth for a moment before thinking better of it and holding it low instead. Caleb appeared at the hallway entrance, Maya close behind him, both peeking in until Isaiah saw them. "Wall," he said. One word. Firm, not harsh. They stepped back immediately. Emma noticed that too. She had seen adults control children through embarrassment. Isaiah did it through trust. The breaker clicked down. The private dining area dimmed. A few guests groaned softly as if darkness were a personal insult. The chandelier above the table went out, and with it, the faint burning smell became clearer. A server whispered, "Oh my goodness." Isaiah closed his eyes for half a second, listening to the silence after the power cut. No hum. No buzz. "Leave it off," he said. "Have your engineer inspect the fixture plate and ballast before service tomorrow." The manager stared at him, caught between gratitude and pride. Pride won first. "We appreciate your concern, Mr. Brooks," Isaiah said. Isaiah Brooks. Vivian heard the full name and something inside her memory shifted again. Brooks. Not just a name on a toolbox now. A voice from years ago. Her father's office. A winter evening. A maintenance contractor standing near the back door with a little boy waiting beside him, both of them carrying lunch pails. She could not see the memory clearly. Only fragments. Her father saying, that Brooks man kept this place standing longer than anyone gave him credit for. Then another voice, colder, telling a child not to touch the lobby furniture. Vivian blinked, and the service hallway came back. Isaiah had already closed the panel. He crouched to fasten the latch properly because leaving things half done bothered him. "You did not have to do that," Vivian said. Isaiah picked up his toolbox. "Yes, ma'am. I did." The answer was not prideful. It was almost tired. There were children under it. Emma looked up at her mother. The sentence had moved her more than the dimmed chandelier, more than the guests, more than the manager's embarrassment. Vivian could see it on her daughter's face. Emma was not impressed by wealth tonight. She was impressed by care. Back in the dining room, the table had been moved, the water had been cleaned, and Maya's chair sat beside Emma's now as if the room had quietly rearranged its loyalties. Caleb placed his napkin in his lap with careful dignity, trying not to show how much the evening had shaken him. Isaiah returned to the table and touched the back of Caleb's chair. "You all right?" Caleb nodded, but his eyes stayed low. "They thought we should leave." Isaiah pulled his own chair in slowly. "People think many things when they are uncomfortable." Maya looked up. "Did we do something bad?" Isaiah's face softened. "No, baby. You spilled water. That is all." Vivian stood near them, hearing every word, feeling each one reveal the size of the gap between providing and parenting. Emma sat beside Maya without asking this time, and Vivian did not stop her. The manager approached again, voice polished into something almost respectful. "Mr. Brooks, your meal will be taken care of tonight." Isaiah looked up at him. "No, thank you." The manager froze. Vivian did too. Isaiah reached for his wallet, worn brown leather, edges cracked. "I brought my children here because my daughter earned dinner, not because we needed someone to rescue us from the bill." The room went still. Not loud still. Deep still. The kind that makes people hear themselves. Vivian's eyes moved to the wallet in his hand, then to the little napkin bird near Emma's plate, then to the old toolbox by his boot. She knew then that she had been wrong about him from the first glance. But she did not yet know how wrong. As Isaiah opened the wallet, a folded, yellowed service receipt slipped halfway out and rested against his fingers. Vivian saw the faded company logo at the top before he tucked it back inside. Sterling Hospitality Group. Her father's old company. And beneath it, handwritten in blue ink, was a name she had not heard in 20 years. Vivian did not say the name out loud. Her lips parted, then closed again, because something about the way Isaiah tucked the receipt back into his wallet told her it was not hers to touch yet. The paper had been old, softened at the folds, carried for years by a man who did not seem like the kind to keep things without reason. Sterling Hospitality Group had not existed under that name since Vivian was in high school, back when her father still walked hotel kitchens before sunrise and knew every maintenance worker by name. She remembered the logo because it had been everywhere in her childhood, on invoices, employee badges, linen trucks, and the brass plaque outside the first hotel her father ever bought. But the handwritten name beneath it had been the part that struck her. Not Isaiah. Not Brooks. Another name. Older. Familiar in the way a song is familiar when heard through a wall. Isaiah paid in cash. Not with a dramatic gesture, not to prove a point, but with the quiet precision of a man who had counted what he had before he came and accepted the limits of that count without making his children carry them. He smoothed the bills, placed them inside the leather folder, and added a tip folded neatly beneath the receipt copy. The manager looked uncomfortable accepting it. Isaiah noticed that too. For the server, he said. She was kind. The young server near the wall swallowed hard and looked down. She had done very little, but Isaiah had seen the little. Vivian felt the shame of that more sharply than if he had accused anyone. Around them, the restaurant began to breathe again. Guests returned to their plates. Silverware clicked. The piano resumed its soft loop near the bar. But the air at Isaiah's table had changed. Emma sat beside Maya now, both girls bent over the folded napkin bird, whispering like they had known each other longer than 10 minutes. Caleb watched them with guarded relief, still protective, still measuring the room. He was a boy learning how to be a man by studying one. Vivian saw that clearly, and it made her glance at Isaiah with a new kind of caution. He was not polished. He was not wealthy. He did not belong to the social language of private dining rooms and donor galas. Yet his children moved around him like he was home itself. Vivian had spent years building homes other people photographed. Penthouse views. Designer kitchens. A bedroom for Emma with custom shelves and a reading nook no one had time to sit in. She had mistaken architecture for warmth. Isaiah reached for Maya's sleeve and gently wiped a spot of sauce from the cuff. "Slow down, hummingbird," he murmured. "Food is not running away." Maya smiled with her mouth full, then remembered her manners and covered it with one hand. Emma laughed. It was light. Unplanned. The sound traveled across Vivian's chest and made something ache. She could not remember the last time Emma had laughed at dinner without looking to see whether it was allowed. Vivian lowered herself into the empty chair at the edge of Isaiah's table before she had fully decided to do it. The movement surprised everyone, including her. Isaiah looked up, polite but alert. Not dazzled. Not eager. Protective first. Always protective first. "Mr. Brooks," she said, and heard how formal it sounded after everything that had just happened. "I owe your family an apology." Isaiah held her gaze. His eyes were tired, dark, steady. "For what, ma'am?" It was a fair question, and that made it harder. For the hostess looking at his boots. For the manager trying to hide him near the service hall. For the couple whispering as if children with less money made more noise. For herself, looking once and almost looking away. Vivian folded her hands in her lap. Her diamond watch caught the candlelight, suddenly too bright. For taking too long to see what was happening. Isaiah did not rush to comfort her. That restraint was its own kind of mercy. He looked at Caleb, then Maya, then Emma, making sure the children were not carrying the weight of adult shame. "Seeing late is still seeing," he said. Vivian absorbed that in silence. Emma turned the napkin bird over. "Mom," she said, softer now, "can Maya and Caleb sit with us for dessert?" Vivian looked at Isaiah first this time, not at the manager, not at the room, not at her phone. Isaiah looked at his children. Caleb's face stayed careful, but Maya was already holding her breath with hope. "Only if we are not imposing," Isaiah said. Vivian almost smiled, though her eyes were still unsettled. "You are not." For a few minutes, nothing dramatic happened. That was what made it feel sacred. 3 children shared one dessert menu. Isaiah reminded Maya to say please. Emma asked Caleb about school. Vivian watched, not as a CEO evaluating a situation, but as a mother realizing her daughter felt safer with strangers who paid attention than with a parent who provided everything from a distance. Then the server returned with a small tray of clean forks. One of them slipped slightly against the porcelain, ringing like an echo of the first sound that had stopped the room. Vivian looked down at it, and the memory behind the old receipt sharpened just enough to hurt. Brooks. Her father. A hotel basement. A man's voice saying, "My boy can fix anything if you give him time." She looked at Isaiah's hands again, the old toolbox by his boot, and the wallet where the receipt had disappeared. She did not know the whole story. But she was beginning to understand that this was not the first time a Brooks man had saved a sterling room from falling apart. The dessert menu lay open between the 3 children like a treaty. Maya wanted chocolate cake because it had 3 layers. Emma wanted the lemon tart because her mother always ordered it for her at places like this, though Vivian suddenly realized she had never asked whether Emma actually liked lemon. Caleb studied the prices before he studied the flavors, and Isaiah saw it without looking directly at him. Fathers learn to read the small math of sacrifice in a child's eyes. "Choose with your stomach, not your worry," Isaiah said quietly. Caleb glanced up. "I am not worried." Isaiah gave him a look so gentle it made the boy smile despite himself. "Then your stomach has expensive eyebrows." Emma laughed first. Then Maya. Then Caleb, trying to hide it behind his water glass. Vivian sat very still at the edge of the table, listening to laughter that did not require permission. It was not loud. It was not perfect. It was just alive. That made it feel almost foreign to her. At her penthouse, dinner usually sounded like cutlery, notifications, and the low voice of a housekeeper asking whether Miss Emma wanted anything else. Here, under a dimmed chandelier and an unsettled room, her daughter had become 12 years old again. Not a calendar appointment. Not a responsibility handled by staff. A child. Isaiah leaned back slightly, giving the children space while keeping them in his line of sight. He did not dominate the table. He held it together without needing credit for it. Vivian noticed the way he corrected Maya's elbow with 2 fingers and a whisper. The way he let Caleb answer for himself instead of speaking over him. The way he asked Emma what she liked as if her answer mattered the first time she gave it. These were not grand gestures. That was why they hurt. Vivian had built a career on grand gestures. New hospitals. Scholarship funds. Press conferences with her name engraved behind podiums. Yet she could not remember the last time she had sat through 10 uninterrupted minutes of her daughter's simple happiness. Near the window, the same well-dressed man who had laughed earlier pushed his chair back and called for the manager in a voice meant to be heard. "Some of us came here for a quiet dining experience, not a school cafeteria." The words landed flat and cold. Maya's smile disappeared. Caleb's hand curled around his napkin. Emma looked down, guilty for enjoying herself. Isaiah did not move fast. He placed his fork down, folded his hands once, and looked at the man with calm eyes. Not challenging. Not shrinking. Simply present. "They are children sharing dessert," Isaiah said. "There is no harm in that." The man scoffed. "There are places for families like yours." A hush spread across the nearby tables. Vivian's face changed before her posture did. She had heard coded cruelty in polished rooms all her life, but she had rarely been forced to hear it while looking at the child it wounded. Isaiah felt Caleb shift beside him. That mattered more than the insult. He turned slightly toward his son, his voice low enough that the table had to lean into it. "Do not let someone else's smallness make you smaller." Caleb swallowed. "Yes, sir." Isaiah looked back at the man. "My family will finish our meal respectfully." I hope you can do the same. No raised voice. No sharp edge. No performance. The room waited for anger and received dignity instead. That made several people look down at their plates. Vivian felt something inside her rearrange. She had spent years mistaking force for strength. Isaiah's restraint made force look childish. The manager hovered, trapped between a paying guest with a complaint and a man whose quiet decency had made the complaint look shameful. Vivian could have ended it with one public sentence. She almost did. Her hand moved toward the table, her diamond watch flashing again. But Isaiah's eyes flicked to her for half a second, not pleading, not warning. Just asking her not to turn his children's dignity into a billionaire's rescue scene. Vivian understood. Slowly, she drew her hand back. Not because she was afraid. Because she was learning. The server arrived with 2 desserts instead of 1, placing them carefully in the center. On the house, she whispered, then corrected herself when Isaiah looked up. From me. I am allowed to buy dessert on my break. Isaiah held her gaze, then nodded. That is kind of you. Maya whispered thank you. Emma did too. Caleb added at last, serious and clear. The server's eyes shone before she turned away. Vivian watched Isaiah accept kindness without surrendering pride, and the difference struck her like a lesson she should have learned long ago. Then Emma slid the napkin bird toward her mother. Can we make one for Mr. Brooks? She asked. Vivian looked at the little folded shape, then at Isaiah's old toolbox by his boot. The name Brooks stared back from the blue tape. This time, Vivian remembered the rest of the sentence from that childhood hallway, her father's voice low and regretful, if anything ever happens to that family, we owe them more than money. Her breath caught so quietly only Isaiah noticed. He did not ask why. He only watched her with the same calm that had unsettled her all night, as if he already knew that some truths arrive before people are ready to speak them. Emma smoothed the napkin bird flat enough to draw on it, but not so much that it lost its shape. Maya leaned close, offering a purple crayon from the small pouch Isaiah kept in his jacket pocket for church programs, waiting rooms, and any place where children were expected to be still longer than their hearts could manage. Caleb watched the room while the girls worked, serious in the way boys become serious when they believe their father has been disrespected and they are not yet old enough to do anything about it. Isaiah saw that too. He reached across the table and nudged Caleb's plate with one finger. Eat your cake before your sister decides fairness means sharing yours. Caleb looked at Maya. Maya looked guilty before she had even done anything. The small joke broke the tension, and Caleb took a bite. Vivian noticed the way Isaiah kept restoring peace without making anyone feel weak for needing it. That was the part she could not stop studying. He did not smooth over pain by pretending it had not happened. He gave it a place to sit, then taught his children not to let it own the room. Emma wrote slowly across the napkin, her letters careful and uneven. To Mr. Brooks, thank you for noticing things. Vivian read the words upside down and felt them land with uncomfortable accuracy. Thank you for noticing things. It was what her daughter had wanted from her all night. Maybe all year. Maybe longer. Isaiah glanced at the message and smiled, but only briefly, as if praise made him uneasy. That is very kind, Miss Emma. Emma's cheeks warmed at being addressed with respect, not as an accessory to her mother's name. You can call me Emma, she said. Isaiah looked to Vivian first. It was such a small act, that permission in his eyes, but it undid Vivian more than any apology could have. He respected her motherhood even after witnessing its cracks. Vivian nodded. Emma is fine. Isaiah turned back to the child. Then thank you, Emma. The girls folded the napkin bird again, this time with the message hidden inside its paper wings. Maya placed it beside Isaiah's plate. Now you have one too, she said. Isaiah's hand rested near it, but he did not pick it up right away. His throat tightened in a way he did not allow his face to show. The last person who had made him paper notes at dinner had been his wife, years ago, back when the kids were smaller and grief had not yet learned their address. Vivian did not know that. But she saw his hand pause. She saw the silence become personal. She looked away to give him privacy and found herself staring again at the old wallet near his elbow. The receipt was tucked away, but the corner had not disappeared completely. Sterling Hospitality Group. A name from the childhood she had edited down to boardroom-friendly memories. Her father, Charles Sterling, had built hotels out of old brick and impossible loans. He had been charming in public, demanding in private, and sentimental only when he thought no one was listening. But Vivian remembered the night after the big storm, when the flagship hotel lost power and guests had filled the lobby with complaints. She had been 13, standing near the staircase in patent leather shoes, watching a black maintenance man and his teenage son work through the night with flashlights and hand tools while executives argued beside silver coffee urns. By morning, the lights came back. Her father shook the man's hand. Later, behind his office door, Vivian heard him say the name. Brooks. Not Isaiah. Another Brooks. The father, maybe. Or an uncle. The memory remained blurred at the edges, but the feeling was sharp. Debt. Gratitude. Something unfinished. A busser passed behind Isaiah's chair and accidentally bumped the toolbox with his shoe. The latch popped loose. Isaiah reached down quickly, but not before the lid opened an inch. Vivian saw only a glimpse, a coil of electrical tape, a worn screwdriver set, a folded school drawing, and an old brass key attached to a faded tag stamped with the same hotel logo she had just seen on the receipt. Then Isaiah closed the box gently. Not secretive. Protective. There was a difference. Sorry, the busser whispered. You are all right, Isaiah said. Nothing broke. But something had shifted. Vivian could feel it. The old key, the receipt, the name, the way Isaiah knew the building systems without needing to prove himself, the way her father's forgotten sentence had risen from the back of her mind at the exact moment this man sat across from her daughter teaching her how to be seen. Emma looked from her mother to Isaiah and back again. Mom, she said softly, do you know Mr. Brooks? Vivian did not answer immediately. Isaiah lifted his eyes. Calm. Guarded. Curious now. Vivian folded her hands on the table, aware of every sound around them, the low piano, the rain against the windows, the faint clink of forks, the dim chandelier above the empty private table. I do not know yet, she said. And for the first time all evening, Isaiah looked as if he understood that she was telling the truth. The question stayed on the table longer than any answer could have. Vivian did not know yet. Isaiah believed her. That was the strange part. In rooms like this, people usually knew exactly what they wanted from him before they ever learned his name. A repair. A discount. Silence. Gratitude without inconvenience. But Vivian Sterling sat across from him with her perfect posture slightly unsettled, her phone abandoned beside a cold plate, and her daughter's handmade napkin bird resting near his hand as if the evening had quietly changed ownership. Isaiah looked down at the old toolbox by his boot. The latch was closed now, but he could feel the weight of the key inside like a question. His father had given him that key when Isaiah was 19, on a night when rain came through the roof of their apartment and pride came through everything his father refused to say. Keep this, son. Some doors remember who opened them, right? Isaiah had never known exactly what that meant. He only knew the key had belonged to a hotel his father would not talk about after the accident that ended his maintenance contract and the lawsuit that never made it past men with better lawyers. Isaiah did not tell Vivian any of that. Not here. Not with his children licking chocolate from forks and Emma watching her mother like she was waiting to see if this new softness would last. Sometimes old things look more important than they are, Isaiah said at last, his voice low. It was an answer to no one and everyone. Vivian studied him. And sometimes people keep old things because they were never given the truth about them. Isaiah's eyes lifted. For 1 second, the noise of the restaurant thinned around them. The piano, the rain, the guests pretending not to listen. Vivian heard herself breathe. She had not meant to say that much. It had slipped out from the same place as the memory of her father's voice. Debt. Gratitude. Something unfinished. Caleb sensed the change before Maya did. He placed his fork down and looked from his father to Vivian. He was too young to understand old business, but old enough to know when adults were stepping around a wound. Isaiah saw him watching and softened immediately. "Finish your cake," he said. "Grown folks are just making sentences too heavy." Caleb nodded, but his eyes stayed careful. Maya, blissfully braver, pushed her plate toward Emma. "You can have the strawberry. I do not like the fuzzy seeds." Emma smiled and took it like she had been offered something far finer than dessert. Vivian watched the exchange and felt the ache return, steady and clean. Her daughter had spent the evening receiving more attention from 2 children with one shared dessert than from a house full of staff paid to anticipate her needs. That was not their fault. It was Vivian's. The manager approached once more, this time without the practiced superiority. He held a small leather folder and looked as though every step toward the table cost him a little pride. "Mr. Brooks," he said, "I wanted to apologize for earlier. I made assumptions." Isaiah turned toward him. The whole table grew quiet, even Maya. This was the moment some people would have used to wound back. Isaiah did not. "We all do that sometimes," he said. "The work is noticing before it becomes someone else's burden." The manager swallowed. "Yes, sir. Sir." The word landed differently now. Not forced. Not performative. Earned by the room finally catching up to what his children had known all along. Vivian looked at Isaiah, and the moral contrast was almost painful. She had seen executives destroy reputations over smaller insults. Isaiah had just handed a man away to become better without humiliating him. It was not weakness. It was discipline. It was strength with its hands open. Emma leaned against the back of her chair, eyes fixed on Isaiah. "Do you teach people?" she asked. Isaiah gave a small laugh. "Only when my kids leave dishes in the sink." "No," Emma said, more serious. "I mean, people. Adults." Vivian should have corrected the question, made it polite, smoothed the edges. She did not. Isaiah looked at Emma for a moment, then at Vivian. "I try not to teach adults unless they ask. Most of them are busy defending what they already know." The sentence touched Vivian so precisely that she looked down. Her fork had gone cold beside the lemon tart she had not tasted. She thought of meetings where she had defended strategies that made employees invisible. Charity events where she had spoken about community, then let her own daughter eat dinner with an empty chair across from her. She thought of her father, complicated and proud, telling someone they owed the Brooks family more than money, then never explaining why. The server returned to refill water glasses. As she reached past Isaiah's plate, the folded receipt slipped from his wallet again, just enough for the blue handwriting to show more clearly. Vivian did not touch it. She only read what the angle allowed. Nathaniel Brooks. Her breath caught. Isaiah saw her reaction this time. Noticed it fully. His hand moved to the wallet, but slowly, without accusation. "That was my father," he said. Vivian's gaze rose to his. The restaurant seemed to tilt around that simple sentence. Nathaniel Brooks. The name opened the memory wider, a kind-faced black man in a work shirt, a boy beside him holding a toolbox too big for his hands, her father gripping Nathaniel's shoulder with tears he refused to let fall. Vivian whispered, almost to herself, "My father knew him." Isaiah did not blink. He had waited years without knowing what he was waiting for. Now, across a restaurant table, with their children between them and an old key locked inside a dented toolbox, the first piece of the past had finally spoken. Vivian did not reach for the receipt, though every instinct sharpened toward it. In her world, information was something to acquire, verify, organize, and control. But Isaiah's hand rested lightly over the old wallet now, not defensive exactly, but careful, like a man standing in front of a door until he knew who was asking to enter. She understood that. Or maybe she was beginning to. Nathaniel Brooks, she said softly, testing the name against the memory. Isaiah's expression did not change, but Caleb looked at him. Maya stopped scraping frosting from her fork. Emma looked between the adults with the quiet alertness of a child who had grown used to listening through unfinished sentences. "Yes, ma'am," Isaiah said. "My father." Vivian's throat tightened. "Charles Sterling was mine." The word settled between them with the strange weight of two families meeting before the people had agreed to it. Isaiah lowered his eyes for a moment, and Vivian could not read whether the name brought respect, pain, or both. Maybe both lived close together. "I know that name," he said. "My father spoke of him once or twice." Vivian waited. Isaiah did not continue. Not because he wanted to be difficult. Because some memories did not belong on a restaurant table beside lemon tart and children's crumbs. Vivian recognized restraint again, and this time it humbled her. She had spent years believing silence was a wall. Isaiah used it like a fence around what mattered. The manager came back with a small white card in his hand, eager now, too eager, sensing that the powerful woman at the table had shifted her attention fully toward the man he had tried to move away. "Miss Sterling, I can arrange a private room if you prefer to speak with Mr. Brooks away from the dining area." The offer sounded respectful, but Isaiah heard the old shape inside it. Away. Hidden. Relocated. Caleb heard it too. His shoulders tightened again. Vivian heard it late, but she heard it. That mattered. She turned to the manager, her voice level. "We are comfortable here." The manager blinked. "Of course. And Mr. Brooks and his children are guests of this restaurant," she added. "Not a disruption to be managed." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Nearby tables quieted all over again, not because Vivian was making a scene, but because she was refusing one. Isaiah looked at her then. Not with gratitude. Not yet. With assessment. It was the look of a man measuring whether someone powerful had done the right thing because it was right, or because being seen doing it cost less than doing nothing. Vivian felt that distinction and accepted it. She had earned no benefit of the doubt tonight. She would have to live inside that truth without decorating it. Emma slipped her hand over the napkin bird and whispered to Maya, "My mom is trying." Maya glanced at Vivian with the merciless honesty of children. "Trying counts if you keep doing it." Vivian almost laughed, but the sound caught somewhere behind her ribs. Isaiah's mouth softened. That is something her grandmother used to say. The mention of his late wife moved through him in a small shadow. Vivian saw it, and for the first time that evening, she did not ask a question just because she wanted an answer. She let the silence remain his. The server placed fresh water on the table. Outside the tall windows, rain ran in thin silver lines down the glass, blurring the streetlights into gold. Inside, the private dining section remained dim from the breaker Isaiah had shut off, leaving the main room warmer, less perfect, more human. Vivian looked at the dark chandelier. She wondered how many parts of her life had kept shining only because someone unseen knew when to turn off the danger. "Your father worked at one of our hotels," she said carefully. Isaiah nodded once. The Beaumont. The name hit her with unexpected force. The Beaumont had been her father's first serious acquisition, the hotel he loved more than the rest because it had nearly ruined him before it made him rich. He was maintenance chief, Isaiah added. Not on paper at first. On paper, he was whatever they needed to call him to pay him less. Vivian did not flinch, though she wanted to. The sentence did not attack her. That made it worse. It simply carried a fact across the table and set it down. I was a child, she said, then immediately hated the excuse hiding in the words. Isaiah heard it too, but did not punish her for it. So was I. That stopped her. Not because it was harsh. Because it was fair. Emma's eyes lowered. Caleb watched his father, proud and worried at the same time. Maya leaned against Isaiah's arm as if to anchor him. Vivian drew a slow breath. I remember a storm, she said. A night when the hotel lost power. Isaiah's fingers tightened once around the wallet. I remember waiting in the basement while my father worked. There it was. The same memory from opposite ends of the hallway. One child upstairs in patent leather shoes. One child downstairs beside pipes and tool carts. Same storm. Different worlds. Vivian looked at him, and the distance between them no longer felt like money. It felt like history. The manager, trying to repair the evening through service, returned with a tray of small dessert boxes for the children. For later, he said gently, this time directing the words to Isaiah first. Isaiah studied him, then accepted with a nod. Thank you. A small redemption, not complete, but started. Vivian noticed Isaiah allowed people room to correct themselves. That might have been the rarest kind of strength in the room. Then Emma looked at Isaiah's toolbox and asked the question no adult had been brave enough to ask. Is that key from the Beaumont? Isaiah became very still. Vivian did too. Caleb looked down at the toolbox. Maya whispered, what key? Isaiah rested one hand on the dented lid, his voice calm but lower than before. Something my father asked me to keep. Vivian felt her father's old sentence rise again, clearer now, almost present, we owe them more than money. She looked at Isaiah and understood that the night had not brought her a stranger. It had brought her an unpaid debt with children sitting beside it. The question about the key changed the temperature of the table. Not enough for the whole restaurant to notice, but enough for the children to feel the air slow down. Isaiah kept his hand on the toolbox lid, not gripping it, not hiding it, simply resting there as if the old metal needed to know he was still present. For years, that key had been a piece of weight he carried without explanation. It had moved with him through apartments, jobs, grief, overdue notices, and the long quiet after his wife passed. He had kept it because Nathaniel Brooks had asked him to, and a son did not always need understanding before obedience. Vivian watched his hand and understood that whatever lived inside that box was not a prop in her memory. It was inheritance. Pain. Proof. Something a working man had protected long after wealthier people forgot what they owed. Emma looked from Isaiah to her mother, suddenly aware that she had stepped into grown-up history without meaning to. I am sorry, she said. I should not have asked. Isaiah turned to her at once, and his expression softened before embarrassment could settle on her. Curiosity is not wrong, he said. It just needs manners to walk with it. Emma nodded, holding that sentence like she had held the napkin bird. Vivian felt another small sting. He corrected her child with more tenderness than Vivian often gave her own daughter when Emma simply interrupted a call. The realization did not arrive as drama. It arrived as a quiet ledger. Line after line. Moment after moment. Places where she had mistaken efficiency for care. Isaiah opened the toolbox only enough to reach inside. He did not display everything. He lifted the brass key by its faded tag and placed it on the table between them. The metal caught the candlelight, dull but stubborn. Beaumont Hotel. Service access. Basement 3. Vivian drew in a breath. The words were familiar from old blueprints, from the restricted floors her father used to say were too dirty for a little girl in Sunday shoes. She remembered standing at the top of a stairwell, looking down into a world of pipes, ladders, and men whose names her family needed but did not always honor. Isaiah looked at the key, not at Vivian. My father said it opened a room nobody wanted to remember. Caleb's eyes lifted. Dad, you never told us that. Isaiah's face tightened with regret, then eased. Some stories have to wait until the people in them are ready to be honest. Vivian accepted the sentence as if it had been addressed to her, because part of it had. She wanted to say she did not know. She wanted to say she had been young. She wanted to say her father's company was different now. But Isaiah had already answered those defenses before she made them. So was I. The words came back and sat beside the key. Outside, rain tapped harder against the windows. The dimmed chandelier above the empty private table looked like a crown with the light taken out of it. At Isaiah's table, the children had gone still in the way children do when they know something important is happening but are not sure whether they are allowed to breathe near it. Maya reached for her father's sleeve. Is Grandpa Nathaniel in trouble? Isaiah looked at her, and his calm deepened into something protective. No, baby. Your grandpa is at peace. Then, after a pause, but maybe his story is not. Vivian closed her eyes for half a second. That one line found every hidden corner of the night. Maybe his story is not. Her father had died 3 years ago, leaving behind towers, hotels, trusts, charities, and drawers of papers no one had opened because grief and business had arrived at the same time. She had inherited assets. She had not inherited confession. The manager appeared near the table but stopped before speaking, as if even he understood that service had reached the edge of something older than dinner. He stepped back. It was the first wise thing he had done all night. Isaiah picked up the key again and turned it in his fingers. I did not bring this here for any reason, he said. It stays in the box. Always has. Vivian looked at him. But you brought the box tonight. My truck has been acting up. I thought I might need tools. A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. Old things have timing. Vivian almost smiled too, but her eyes were wet before she could make the expression safe. Emma noticed and moved closer, not to comfort her exactly, but to be near her. It was the first time that night Emma had chosen closeness instead of distance. Vivian did not reach for her phone. She reached for her daughter's hand. Isaiah saw it and looked away, giving them the dignity of not being watched. That kindness, after everything, nearly undid Vivian. The well-dressed man by the window had gone silent. The servers moved more gently. The room no longer seemed so certain of itself. Caleb studied the key, then his father. Are we going to find the room? Isaiah did not answer right away. He looked at Vivian, and for the first time, the question belonged to both families. Vivian's voice came out low, careful, stripped of power. The Beaumont is still standing, she said. My company owns it. Isaiah's fingers closed around the key. Not in anger. Not in triumph. In recognition. Vivian continued, barely above the rain against the glass. And tomorrow morning, I think we need to see what your father wanted someone to remember. Morning came with the gray softness that follows a hard rain. The streets of Charlotte still shone under the first light, puddles holding pieces of sky beside the curb. Isaiah woke before the alarm, as he always did, but for once he did not rise immediately. He lay still in the quiet apartment, listening to Caleb breathe from the next room and Maya shift beneath her blanket, and he felt the old brass key waiting on the kitchen table like a question with patience. Last night had not left him. Not the chandelier. Not the restaurant's polished cruelty. Not the way Vivian Sterling had bent to pick up her own fork as if the room had tilted her into humility. Not her voice when she said the Beaumont was still standing. Isaiah turned his head toward the hallway where his work boots waited by the door. He had spent years walking into buildings through side entrances, service doors, loading docks, and basement steps. Now a billionaire was asking him to walk through the front of his father's unfinished story. That did not feel like opportunity. It felt like responsibility. In the kitchen, he packed lunches slower than usual. Caleb appeared first, already dressed, hair still damp from the shower. He looked at the key on the table but did not touch it. "Are we really going?" he asked. Isaiah poured coffee into a travel mug. "I am going. You and your sister are going to school." Caleb's face tightened. But it was Grandpa's key. Isaiah heard the hurt under the words. He set the mug down and turned fully toward his son. "And that is why I need to understand it before I put the weight of it in your hands." Caleb wanted to argue, but the steadiness in his father's voice slowed him down. Maya shuffled in wearing mismatched socks and holding the napkin Bird Emma had given them before they left the restaurant. She had slept with it near her pillow. "Is Miss Emma coming too?" she asked. Isaiah tied her loose braid with a rubber band from the counter. "I do not know, Hummingbird." Maya considered that. "She should. She looks like she needs friends." Isaiah smiled faintly, but the sentence stayed with him. Across town, Vivian Sterling stood in her penthouse kitchen while Emma ate cereal at the island. The room was spotless, bright, and quiet enough to make the spoon against the bowl sound lonely. Vivian had 3 meetings waiting, 2 legal calls, and 1 message from her assistant asking whether she wanted to reschedule the morning site visit she had requested at midnight. She had not explained why. She had only written, "Beaumont Hotel, 9 o'clock, no press, no board, no entourage." Emma watched her mother fasten a simple watch instead of the diamond one. "Can I come?" Vivian paused. "To the hotel?" Emma nodded. "It was my birthday dinner too." There it was. Not accusation. Ownership. Vivian looked at the child she had spent years protecting from inconvenience and accidentally training for loneliness. She almost said no. School mattered. Routine mattered. Then she remembered Isaiah looking at his children before every decision, as if their dignity was not separate from the adult world but central to it. Vivian set her phone face down. "Yes," she said. Emma's eyes widened, cautious hope arriving before trust. "Really? Really?" At 9 o'clock, Isaiah's old blue Ford turned onto the block where the Beaumont stood. The hotel rose between newer glass towers like a memory the city had built around instead of through. Red brick. Green awnings. Brass doors dulled by time. His father had described it once as a stubborn old lady with good bones. Isaiah parked at the curb rather than the valet stand. He sat with both hands on the steering wheel, the toolbox on the passenger seat, the key in his coat pocket. For a moment, he was 19 again, holding a lunch pail too big for his age, waiting in a basement while grown men decided what a working man's word was worth. Then a black SUV pulled up behind him. Vivian stepped out first, elegant but less armored than the night before, her pale hair tied back, her coat simple, her face carrying the weight of someone who had not slept cleanly. Emma climbed out after her, holding the napkin Bird in one hand. Isaiah got out of the truck. No handshake came immediately. Some meetings were too delicate for performance. "Mr. Brooks," Vivian said. "Miss Sterling." Emma lifted the paper Bird slightly. "Good morning." Isaiah's expression softened. "Good morning, Emma." They stood together on the wet sidewalk, 2 families shaped by the same building from opposite sides of its walls. A doorman recognized Vivian and hurried to open the brass doors, but Isaiah's eyes had already moved past the entrance, down toward a narrow side stairwell half hidden behind an old service gate. The lock was rusted. The sign read "Employees Only. Basement access restricted." Vivian followed his gaze. "The front desk has master keys," she said. Isaiah touched the brass key in his pocket. "My father did not leave me a front desk key." Vivian said nothing. That was the right answer. Isaiah stepped toward the service gate, and when he slid the old key into the lock, it resisted for one long second before turning with a low, stubborn click. Emma inhaled softly. Vivian looked at Isaiah. Isaiah looked down the dark stairwell. The Beaumont had opened its forgotten door. The stairwell smelled of cold brick, old rain, and time. Isaiah went first, not because anyone told him to, but because every part of him understood the order of care. Vivian followed with Emma close beside her, one hand resting lightly near her daughter's shoulder without quite holding on. She was still learning how to offer closeness without turning it into control. The service stairs descended beneath the Beaumont in narrow turns, past flaking paint and pipes that clicked softly in the walls. Above them, the lobby carried on with its polished morning sounds, rolling suitcases, quiet greetings, the soft chime of elevators. Down here, the hotel sounded different. Honest. Undecorated. Like a building exhaling through its bones. Isaiah's flashlight cut a clean path through the dimness. The beam passed over old conduit, valve tags, a rusted cart, and numbers painted on cinder block walls. Basement 1. Basement 2. Then Basement 3. He stopped at the bottom landing. The brass key felt warmer now, as if his father's hand had not fully left it. Vivian stood behind him, her breath careful. Emma did not speak. Children sometimes understood sacred places faster than adults did. At the end of the corridor stood a gray metal door with no handle on the outside, only a keyhole and a faded label almost hidden beneath dust. Mechanical archive. Authorized personnel only. Isaiah stared at it longer than he meant to. His father had spent his life opening doors for other people and being told which rooms he was allowed to enter. Now the last door had waited for his son. "Take your time," Vivian said softly. Isaiah looked back at her. Not surprised by the kindness, but measuring it, because kindness from powerful people could sometimes arrive dressed as control. Vivian seemed to understand that too. She stepped back half a pace. "This is your key." That sentence mattered. Isaiah turned to the door and slid the brass into the lock. It resisted harder this time. Old metal grinding against old silence. Then it gave. The sound was small, but it moved through all three of them. Inside, the room was not dramatic. No treasure chest. No shining secret. Just shelves, file boxes, rolled blueprints, broken fixtures, a desk with a green banker's lamp, and dust settled over everything like a second skin. Isaiah stepped in slowly. His light found a wall covered with yellowed maintenance logs, photographs, and handwritten notes pinned beneath curling tape. Vivian moved closer, then froze. There, in a photograph near the center, stood Charles Sterling in a soaked dress shirt, younger and exhausted, beside a black man in work coveralls holding a wrench. Nathaniel Brooks. Between them stood a teenage boy with a toolbox too large for his hands. Isaiah. He remembered that night in Pieces, thunder above the loading dock, his father's voice telling him not to be afraid of the dark, men in suits arguing while water ran under the basement door. He had forgotten the photograph. Or maybe no one had ever shown it to him. Emma pointed to another paper. "Mom," she whispered. Vivian stepped toward the desk. On top lay a sealed envelope, yellowed but intact, with two names written across the front in blue ink. For Charles Sterling, and for Nathaniel Brooks's son, if Charles loses his nerve. Vivian's hand went to her mouth. Isaiah did not move. The word struck him harder than anger would have. If Charles loses his nerve. That was not a business note. That was confession waiting for courage. Vivian looked at Isaiah, her face pale in the flashlight glow. "I do not know what is inside." Her voice trembled, but she did not hide from him. "I need you to believe that." Isaiah studied her for a long moment. Behind his eyes moved years of unpaid bills, his father's silence, his mother's tired prayers, every room that had treated a Brooks like help but never history. Then he nodded once. "I believe you do not know. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just truth given carefully." Emma reached for Vivian's hand this time. Vivian held it. Isaiah picked up the envelope, but he did not open it immediately. He turned it over, saw the old hotel seal, and felt his father's life press against his palm. On the wall beside the desk, half hidden behind a rolled blueprint, was a framed line written in Nathaniel's unmistakable hand: "A building only stands because of the people no one sees." Isaiah read it once. Then again. Vivian read it too, and something in her elegant, guarded face broke open without sound. The Beaumont had not just opened a forgotten room. It had opened the distance between what her family had built and who had carried the weight beneath it. Isaiah slipped the envelope into his coat pocket, close to his heart, and looked around the room his father had trusted him to find. He had come for an answer. What he found was a question big enough to change every life upstairs.